Alessandro Striggio wrote one of the largest and longest works of the whole 16th century, one of the great works of the Renaissance. It was a mass, so the Kyrie, the Gloria, the Credo, the Sanctus, the Benedictus, the Hosanna, and an Agnus Dei, a long work which in fact turns out to be about half an hour of music. I've been looking for this great lost work from the Italian Renaissance for about 20 years. The first time that I came across a trace of it was when I was in Paris in the National Library there. It was in 2005 that I finally found it. But I was convinced it had to be in the Bibliothèque Nationale. And if I couldn't find it, it had to mean that either the work had been miscatalogued or it was lying there somewhere under the wrong name or the wrong title or something. And as it turned out, all of those things were true. It was under the wrong name, under the wrong title, and wrongly catalogued. So when I eventually identified it, I could see why it had been missing for all these centuries. We're all used to having a choir of 100 people, but that is only 4-part music: soprano, alto, tenor, bass. When you have a really big choir, the choir splits into what's called a double choir, where you have 2 separate musical lines for the soprano, 2 separate ones for the alto, 2 separate ones for the tenor, and 2 separate ones for the bass. So that's a really big choir, a double choir, 8-part writing. But Striggio's Mass is for 5 8-part choirs. It's 40 separate musical lines, or 60 musical lines in the last movement, completely independent musical lines. We do know that the Mass was written in Florence at the court of the richest Italian family, probably the richest family in Europe in the 16th century, the Medici family. Every other royal family in Europe was indebted to the Medici. The emperor was in debt to them, the Queen of France was in debt to them, King Philip of Spain was in debt to them, even the Pope was in debt to them. And the Medicis were immensely rich. And at this time, the Duke of Florence was the second Cosimo de' Medici. And what Cosimo wanted was to be named King of Tuscany. Now, that didn't work out. Nobody would agree to calling him king. So Cosimo suggested that maybe they should be made Grand Dukes. That would have made them more powerful than any other Italian prince. And the Pope was in favor, but the Holy Roman Emperor refused. And it was just at this point, exactly the same week as I later found in my researches, that Striggio was sent by the Medici to visit the Holy Roman Emperor with the Mass in his baggage. So the Mass was like a gigantic musical present. Bribe is perhaps too big a word. I suppose to end the story, one should say the Mass didn't work. At the political level, the Holy Roman Emperor refused to grant the title. And he just prevaricated and said, well, I can't decide. So it's a long story, and the Mass fits right into this, right at the heart of the political story. It's quite unique in the history of music for a work of this kind to be used in this way. What's really remarkable about polychoral music is that it uses a concept which is actually a very modern concept. That's using space as an integral part of the musical experience. For example, there are the 5 choirs, and if you imagine the 5 choirs placed in a semicircle, which is how we think they were probably placed. So in terms of a clock, for example, you'd have choir 1 over at 9 o'clock, choir 2 at 10:30, choir 3 at 12 o'clock, choir 4 at 1:30, choir 5 at 3 o'clock. And it's this great wave of sound that goes from left to right until suddenly everybody is singing. It's a tremendous physical effect that you feel only when you're actually present at the live performance. There is always a very particular thrill when music which has been silent for 4.5 centuries is suddenly sounding again.